Welcome to the Peep Show podcast.
News and stories from the sex industry.
With Jessie and PJ Sage. Welcome back to another episode of the Peep Show podcast. This week we bring you an interview with Cindy Gallop, CEO of Make Love Not Porn, a site devoted to social sexuality. We discuss how COVID-19 is spurring sex tech innovation and highlighting how care work has been undervalued. We also discuss the relaunch of Make Love Not Porn. But first, an update from your hosts.
This episode of the Peep Show podcast is sponsored by Quick and Dirty Media.
Are you an independent content creator, webcam model, or clip maker? Quick and Dirty Media can help you with your video editing and production needs at a reasonable price, allowing you to devote more time to creating your content. As a special offer for Peep Show podcast listeners, the first 5 content creators who submit a video for editing will receive their first order free. Make sure to use the promo code PeepShowPod. Find Quick and Dirty Media on Twitter at QuickDirtyMedia or send an email to info@quickanddirtymedia.com. Quick and Dirty Media is proud to be an adult-friendly business.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Peep Show podcast.
Welcome.
Well, we've had a week.
Oh my gosh, it's been so busy. We're trying so hard to get the Peep Show podcast back up and going.
Yeah, it's been a lot of work, a lot of catch up. We built a new website.
Yeah, you all should check it out. It's at peepshowmedia.com.
In addition to hosting the podcast and Jessie's column, we also hope that it's going to be an opportunity to post some writing and some essays and maybe
art.
Yeah, art and other things, not only from us, but hopefully from some other contributors in the community as well. So we're going to kind of figure out how to build that and what sort of model to create. But we thought it would be really cool to have a website as a space to curate more of the things that we're interested in sharing, and also just as a place to be able to give you all regular updates.
Yeah, and we're also building a merch store. You'll be able to buy t-shirts and buttons and pins and coffee mugs. Coffee mugs, of course, are the most important thing, but there are other cool things on there too.
We also have tote bags.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about the tote bags. Yeah, so we have all kinds of cool Peep Show podcast things, and the store is going to go up this week. We also have very sexy friends who are modeling some of the shirts, so we feel grateful to have so many sexy friends.
And so many generous friends.
Yeah, okay. They're also nice. So yeah, we've been really busy working on that. We also thought it would be fun to create an OnlyFans for the Peep Show podcast. So there is a Peep Show OnlyFans as well. So we put that up on the Twitter. So on the Twitter.
On the Twitters.
On the Twitter sphere.
It. And what's the OnlyFans?
The OnlyFans is onlyfans.com/peepshowpodcast.
Alrighty. So check that all out. And
yeah, check all of that stuff out.
Great episode.
Make us feel like our efforts are worth it. Yeah, so that's what we've been busy doing this week.
Well, that's not the only thing we've been busy doing this week, because also there was a really cool online conference run by, well, why don't you tell them about it since you were part of it?
Yeah, Women of Sex Tech. So Women of Sex Tech is an organization, and they put on their first ever virtual conference that a lot of people were in, including myself. So I gave a talk at the conference. Danielle Blunt and SX Noir gave talks as well. And then there was talks from people who were outside of the sex industry, but in like sex tech, who were talking about abortion access and a lot of other things that are being impacted by COVID-19. And the headliness. No, what I was trying to say is, oh my gosh, what do you call the person who?
The keynote speaker.
The keynote speaker. Wow, I must have left academia a long time ago because I've lost my compass for talk language. But yeah,
I'm sure the talk language will come back to you.
Okay. All right. Cindy Gallop gave the keynote talk, and we are bringing her on the show today. She talked a lot about how COVID-19 is a opportunity for sex tech innovation, which is not what I talked about.
So yeah, your talk is pretty relevant to the podcast. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah. I mean, at the risk of sounding like a buzzkill, which is kind of how my talk was. But no, I was asked to give a talk about the impact of COVID-19 on sex workers and online sex workers in particular. And what I talked about is the fact that what I had been noticing is an influx of non-sex workers reaching out to me, asking me, once shelter-in-place orders went in, how to get into online sex work. And I felt like the subtext of a lot of their questions, and sometimes it wasn't even subtext, sometimes they just said this, was that they wanted to get into online sex work because it seemed like a low risk, quick and easy money. And
I mean, a lot of folks probably were furloughed or had recently lost jobs or were worried about losing jobs or, all the stuff everyone's been facing during COVID.
Yeah. And I mean, I completely understand this. I understand where they're coming from. I mean, I can't, I got into online sex work when I was going through a divorce and leaving a PhD program. I didn't have a job and my whole life was upturned. So it's not as if I don't understand where they're coming from. The thing that I was concerned about, though, is the fact that I think that there's a mistaken idea that this is low risk and that they'll be able to, dip their toes in and go out of it as soon as their jobs become available. And I feel like people knew coming into the industry, especially now when piracy is so rampant and when facial recognition software is becoming so good and when everything that we do online is permanent and is connected to every other one of our online personas. I think it's really important to understand like what those risks are and how that can shape your life, particularly at a Women of Sex Tech conference, because I wanted to talk about the way that tech gets weaponized against marginalized people, and sex workers are obviously marginalized people.
Right, and how tech is largely designed for like white dudes or with privileged white dudes in mind.
Yeah. And they're not the people who design these platforms and all of this technology are not the ones who are impacted by it. And they're not the ones who are punished by it. So I set out to talk about what some of those risks are and why it's also not the quick and easy money that a lot of media representations depict.
Yeah, so the talk was recorded, and as soon as it's available, we'll definitely post it on our new website.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the advantages to having a website for the podcast. Yeah.
Okay, well, we should probably get to our interview with Cindy.
Yeah, that sounds great. Let's get to it.
Thanks for joining us today. Jessie and I are dedicated to platforming sex worker voices and covering important political issues for those in the sex trades. But we can't do it without your help.
If you believe in our mission, find us at patreon.com/peepshowpodcast and show us some love.
We're also seeking advertisers to help us grow. Thanks for helping us make Peep Show happen.
Cindy Gallop is the founder and CEO of MakeLoveNotPorn.com, launched at TED in 2009 with the tagline pro-sex, pro-porn, pro-knowing the difference. In 2013, she turned Make Love Not Porn into the world's first user-generated, human-curated social sex video sharing platform, socializing and normalizing sex in order to make it easier to talk about, to promote consent, communication, good sexual values, and good sexual behavior. She speaks at conferences globally and consults, describing her approach as the I like to blow shit up. I am the Michael Bay of business. So, hi, Cindy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Jessie. I'm thrilled to be here.
I have to say that I watched your launch in 2009 and have been following your platform and your career, and I am very honored to talk to you today.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Yeah, we're both happy to have you here.
Aw.
Today, we're talking about the Women in Sex Tech conference that was last weekend that both you and I spoke at. And I was really interested in the talk that you gave because one of the things that you were talking about is the fact that you think that the situation with COVID-19 is going to change the way that we think about socializing, about sex, and about emotional labor. So I was wondering if you could kind of talk about how you think things may change or how you hope that they change after this pandemic.
Sure, and you're absolutely right to ask the question that way, Jessie, because I feel that what we have now is opportunity, and opportunity really for two things. One is the changes that absolutely are being wrought,
Mm-hmm.
but the second is the opportunity to actually leverage those changes to really make them work in the way that we would all like to see them work. Out of adversity comes opportunity. The pandemic is ensuring that the world will never be the same again. And that is actually a very good thing for those of us who are never the status quo to begin with.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think that we have an opportunity to take what is happening in a broad context and make it work for all those of us who work in any area to do with sex. Right now, every evening here in New York at 7, people are clapping and cheering for healthcare workers, people on the front line, first responders, the grocery store clerks, the supply chain, the
Mm-hmm.
MTA, who are keeping everything going in a way that enables the rest of us to stay safe in lockdown and to
Right.
be looked after. And that's all very well. But I really want to see that appreciation turn into a complete reorientation of how we value and compensate people operating at different levels of society. Because the vast majority of those healthcare workers and people on the front line are female. And historically, the assumption has ludicrously been that when you are somebody who chooses to do a job where you care for other people and you put your heart and soul into it,
Mm-hmm.
you get paid very little. And there's an assumption that because you care, that's fine. Whereas the men, and they absolutely are men, who are setting out to make money and don't give a damn about anybody and do not care about people at all and have zero empathy and humanity,
Yeah.
deserve to be paid a whole ton more and to make inconceivably large amounts of money.
Yeah.
And I would like to see that value equation completely rebalanced coming out of this pandemic. And I think there's the opportunity there to really shine the spotlight on what matters in the work that people do. And now that we are all in this very unique situation where we are all going through the same thing, whatever level of society you operate at, whoever you are, we are all in lockdown. We are all worried about COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great level and a great unifier. And I think we have to seize that opportunity to really make people look at all of this differently. And I think the opportunity also lies in the fact that for years and years, we've all assumed that, the future is digital, the future is virtual, it's all about technology. The pandemic has absolutely brought home to all of us that what really matters in this life is IRL, love, intimacy, warmth, care, human connection, human interaction. And coming out the other side of this, everything that leverages that, I think, has the opportunity to be revalued and compensated far more deservedly than it ever has been to date. And so I really want to see those of us who see that now take this and run with it and make it happen in the way that we'd like to.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear you say that. As I was listening to you talk, I was thinking about the fact that I used to be a doula and I stopped working as a doula. And part of the reason for that was because I couldn't make ends meet doing that work. But there was a culture within it because doulas are typically women helping other women through like childbirth, that we care a lot about the work that we're doing. And perhaps we shouldn't be charging for it because every woman who's going through childbirth deserves emotional and informational and physical support through her childbirth. But that totally left out the people who were doing that work. And
Exactly. No, I mean, my response, Jessie, is fuck that shit, quite frankly.
I mean, that's why I became a sex worker. I was like, well, at least they'll pay me here.
Yeah. And you know, Jessie, I've encountered that myself in a different context, which is my background is advertising, but I actually started my career working in theatre.
Mm-hmm.
And I began working in theatre because I fell madly in love with theatre at university. I was absolutely passionate about it. And the same thing operates in the arts, where the assumption is, because you're passionate about theatre, you can be paid chicken feed.
Right.
Because you're doing it for the love of the art. And the extraordinary thing, that I've discovered subsequently is actually in the world of theatre, there's a real kind of pushback against any suggestion that they consider redesigning their business model and focus on how they can make more money. It's like, oh, no, don't bring your nasty, dirty commercialism anyway.
Right.
And that's ridiculous, but because actually the thing that I always felt, and even though, I eventually left theatre because I got completely fed up with working 24/7 and earning chicken feed.
Right.
But when I go to a theatre show now, it is magic. It is a unique art form. And I would love to see, access to theatre democratized so that many more people get to experience it and work in it. And you can only do that when you have a really thriving, money-making industry,
right?
That is then able to do things that bring more people in, is able to pay more people to work in it so they can, et cetera, et cetera. And so I really want to overturn that ridiculous presumption that if you love something, you should not be making money out of it, because, oh my God, look at the state the world is in, when the men who don't give a shit about anything are making all the money there is to be had.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. No, I think that that's really important. And one of the things that you bring up is the fact that when you pay people so little to do these really, really important work, that means that you're excluding a huge percentage of people who can't give away their labor for free, who aren't in positions to do that, and who could do really incredible things within the whatever arena it is.
Yeah. And you're also denying them power and influence, right?
Absolutely. So in the first instance, I say to women, whatever job you're in at the moment or whatever you're interviewing for, it's critically important you go into your next performance and pay review or your next interview determined to make an absolute goddamn fucking shit ton of money. And so the amount you always ask for is the highest amount you can say out loud without actually bursting out laughing. Well, trust me. And the reason to do that is I say, don't just do that for you, do it for us.
Yeah.
Because if you want a job, if you do not do that, the men who run the company, because again, it's pretty much always men, when the leadership team looks down that gigantic Excel spreadsheet of all of the salaries in the company, and when they see, as they will, that all the women are paid less than the men, that equates in their minds to that's because the women are less good than the men.
Right. Less valuable.
Yeah, exactly. And so you have to get your salary up to counter that for all of us. But then I also make the point that, when we make an absolute goddamn fucking shit ton of money, we can then use that money to fund other women, to support other women, to help other women, to donate to other women. We need to build our own financial ecosystem because the white male one is not working for us. And just imagine how much we, the other 50% of the population, could help women everywhere if we had that kind of money that the other 50% does right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, the priorities would presumably be a lot different.
Absolutely. I mean, I think everybody knows who needs help.
Right.
But the nature of the old world order financial ecosystem is that it is so wrapped up in things that militate against the ability to deliver that help, that yes, our perspective would be a completely fresh one on how you help the people that really need help, and how you help them to help themselves, and how you help them to completely transform the nature of the ecosystem that we all exist in.
Yeah. I think that I want to go back to what you were saying in terms of the specifics of COVID-19, because I think that one of the things that we're seeing that hopefully will make a permanent shift in how people are thinking about labor is that the essential jobs, the people who everyone is reliant on, are not the people whose jobs we typically elevate in our culture as it stands now.
Absolutely, and I think it's very important to make sure that coming out the other side of this, we drive change in that area. I mean, for example, all over social media are posts along the same lines.
Mm-hmm.
I read a tweet, some weeks back from a man going, I've been tutoring my kid at home for 30 minutes, and I now believe all teachers should be paid $1 million a year. And there are a ton of posts like that, and they're very funny, and they're also very true. Let's make damn sure that shit happens on the other side of this.
Mm-hmm.
Because now, parents everywhere parents are literally going, oh my God, how do their teachers put up with 8 hours of my kids every day? I have no idea how they do it. But,
and not only mine, but 30 others.
Yeah, exactly. Never have people had it brought home to them more viscerally and emotionally how much the people they relied on every day without even thinking about it deserve to be valued and compensated for the extraordinary job they do. And I really want to see all of that not drop away on the other side of this, but actually, a genuine societal reorientation of the value equation to change those salaries. And in fact, I was talking about this last night on a Zoom social session, but we were talking last night about the complete destruction of the bar and restaurant industry here in New York, and equally, obviously, elsewhere across the nation. Within this discussion were, a number of restaurant owners who were saying that, the thing that really did them in was New York City rents.
Yeah.
Because it was just impossible to carry on preserving their space in the current financial climate with lockdown happening and no customers.
Right.
And because obviously the rent issue is one that everybody's facing, that coming out of it, there has to be a way to completely reset the way that rent works in New York City and elsewhere, because it's ludicrous.
Right.
It's ludicrous for living, and it's ludicrous for commerce. And actually a total reset, which obviously involves, what landlords are dealing with as well, could completely transform every industry as well as society as a whole. And, and by the way, I hasten to add, I'm not an economist. I don't know exactly how you would do that, but I think that we should try.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it has, and this has really far-reaching implications, because on a more personal level, I write a sex column in Alt Weekly, and my column has been furloughed, and part of the reason for that is because Alt Weeklies run on the advertisement of restaurants and venues, and when restaurants and venues are all shut down, they're not paying advertisers, which means that my paper can't pay me. A lot of this has to be rethought.
There's a whole domino effect.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's so interesting because all of this proves that everything is interrelated.
Right.
And right now, it's interrelated to negative effect.
Right.
And I want us to see how we could interrelate to positive effect.
Right. Yeah, it is interrelated, because I think a lot of people wouldn't think well, I can't write a sex column if restaurants shut down. Those things seem unrelated, except that they're completely connected.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I guess flipping that coin is the question is, how do you re-engineer these social relations so that there is, instead of less opportunity to write a sex column, more opportunity to do those sorts of work that have important social value?
One of the things that I've been talking about for years in my business consultancy role, which is how I support myself alongside Make Love Not Porn, I talk a lot about the need to redesign business models. And I make that point because I observe all too often people across every industry think one of two things. They either think this is our industry business model, This is the only way our industry makes money. This is the only way our industry will ever make money.
Right.
Or they think there are a set number of business models out there and we have to operate one of those.
Mm-hmm.
And neither is true, because your business model can be anything you want it to be. And in fact, a really good starting point for designing your own business model, which I encourage people to do, is to simply ask yourself the question, how would I like to make money? Because it's a safe bet you'd like to make money, not the way you're making it now.
Mm-hmm.
And when you blue sky it like that, that can actually provide real opportunity to innovate. So, I designed Make Love Not Porn's business model myself around my own beliefs and philosophies. Actually, everything about Make Love Not Porn is designed around my own beliefs and philosophies. But, I believe very strongly that everybody should realize the value of what they create. And I feel that particularly strongly because, as I said earlier, my background is theatre and advertising, two industries where ideas and creativity are massively undervalued, even by the creators themselves.
Yeah.
So I believe that when you create something that gives other people pleasure, you should see a financial return on it.
Mm-hmm.
And the more people you give more pleasure to, the greater that financial return should be. And so, I designed Make Love Not Porn around what I call my business model of the future, which is shared values plus shared action equals shared profit, financial profit and social profit.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, when you come together with your audiences, and by audiences, I mean, consumers, employees, analysts, but when you come together on the basis of values that you all share, which, by the way, is the most important requirement for a good relationship in life as much as business. You will never truly bond with someone who don't share the same values. When you come together around shared values, and when you are then enabled collaboratively and collectively to co-act on those values, you can then make things happen in the real world that will benefit consumers, benefit society, and benefit the brand and its business. And so, I conceived Make Love Not Porn as basically, we split all income 50-50 with our contributors, our Make Love Not Porn stars, as we call them. And I also conceived that business model because I wanted to democratize access to income. And so when we launched MakeLoveNotPorn.tv back in the fall of 2012 in closed beta, we took it public in 2013.
Okay.
I wrote a blog post introducing our business model, and I headlined it, How Make Love Not Porn Can Help the Global Economy. And I began it by saying, all those little scam ads that pop up on the internet all the time going, make $2,000 a week working from home. Well, now you can. I wanted this platform to be a source of income for anybody just doing what comes naturally. And I said back then that I really hoped one day to take it to the kind of scale, and by the way, this is still my ambition, one day, it's a long and weary road, as you know, but
yeah,
one day we want to hit the kind of critical mass where your Make Love Not Porn video could hit 1 million rentals at $5 per rental, and we give you half that income.
Do you think that the Make Love Not Porn stars, as you call them, are they mostly exclusively working on your site? Or are they also putting the same videos up on the other platforms? Is there overlap? Is there significant overlap between this and people putting clips on other sites? And have they talked to you about what the difference between those things are?
So first of all, the answer is no, there isn't, because our requirement is actually that any video submitted to Make Love Not Porn be exclusive to us.
Okay.
If you want to take your videos down and then go post them somewhere else, that's fine. But as long as you are, a contributor to Make Love Not Porn, we ask that your content is exclusive to us. And the reason we do that is because, we exist to be a social sex video sharing platform. So we are effectively what Facebook would be if Facebook allowed you to socially, sexually self-express, which, as we all know, it sadly does not.
Right.
And our social sex videos are not performative and they're not produced. We're encouraging people to essentially film themselves in the same way that they share videos on Facebook, spontaneously, in the moment, warts and all, embarrassing happenings and all, ridiculousness, comical, because I always say if porn is the Hollywood movie, Make Love Not Porn is the real world sex documentary.
Okay.
You know, we act as a counterpoint and a complement to porn. And so, A, we ask that content be exclusive. B, we do have a category unique to us, which, again, I concepted pre-launch and asked my friends if they would very kindly contribute to it, and they very kindly did. You know, given that we are pro-sex, pro-porn, pro-knowing the difference, I wanted to Make Love Not Porn to be a place where porn stars would share videos of the sex they have offset in the real world.
Yeah, interesting.
Because obviously porn stars have real world sex too.
Right.
That is very different from what they perform on set.
Yeah.
And so, our, gay, straight, lesbian, trans porn star friends, but very kindly helped populate this unique category. And again, those videos are unique to us, but because obviously those real world porn stars have their own videos elsewhere, in lots of places. But Make Love Not Porn is where they share videos of the sex they have in their real world relationships with their real world partners. And in fact, talking in those videos about how different what they're doing there is from what they perform professionally.
Now is a good time to hit the pause button and head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/peepshowpodcast. Even $1 a month shows us that you care and want to see Peep Show continue to thrive. Also, you can help increase our reach with a review on iTunes.
Yeah, I have so many questions. This is, one thing is we work in the industry, and, there is so much stigma around working in the porn industry, whether it's, on one end from, second wave feminists, on the other end, there's social conservatives. And I just wanted to ask, more specifically about the idea of make love not porn and the kind of distinction you're making there. You say you said you're pro porn and pro knowing the difference. Can you just spell that out for our listeners a little bit?
Sure. I should explain that Make Love Not Porn is a complete and total accident. I never consciously intentionally set out to do anything I very bizarrely find myself doing now. It came about through my direct personal experience dating younger men. The men I date tend to be in their 20s. And realizing, and this was actually 12 or 13 years ago now, that through dating younger men, I was encountering what happens when two things converge. And I always stress the dual convergence because most people think it's only one thing. I realized that I was experiencing what happens when today's total freedom of access to hardcore porn online meets our society's equally total reluctance to talk openly and honestly about sex.
Right.
It's when those two things converge that porn becomes sex education by default in not a good way. And so I found myself encountering a number of sexual behavioral memes in bed. I went, whoa, I know where that behavior is coming from. And I thought, gosh, if I'm experiencing this, other people must be as well. But by the way, I've got sirens going by. Do you want me to
No, that's fine. We can hear you. It's part of the New York ambiance.
Exactly. So, at the time, this was me in complete isolation because back 12, 13 years ago, nobody was writing about this. Nobody was talking about this. So as a naturally action-oriented person, I just went, I want to do something about this. So 11 years ago, purely as a little side venture, I put up a tiny clunky website at makelovenotporn.com that in its original iteration was just words. The construct was porn world versus real world.
Yeah.
And made it funny. In fact, those slides are on the homepage of makelovenotporn.tv today. Anyway, I launched that at TED in 2009, became the only TED speaker to say the words "come on my face" on the TED stage.
I remember that.
The talk went viral as a result, and it drove this huge global response to my tiny website that I had never anticipated. And I realized I'd uncovered a very widespread global issue. Thousands of people wrote to me from every country in the world, pouring their hearts out, young and old, men and females, straight and gay. And I felt I had a personal responsibility to take Make Love Not Porn forwards in a way that would make it much more far-reaching, helpful, and effective. And I also saw an opportunity to do what I believe in very strongly, which is that the future of business is doing good and making money simultaneously. I saw the opportunity for a big business solution to this untapped global need. And I use the word big advisedly because even then, 11 years ago at concept stage, I knew that if I wanted to counter, and again, very important here, the word is not compete, the word is to counter the global impact of porn as default sex ed, I would have to come up with something that at least had the potential one day to be just as mass, just as mainstream, and just as all-pervasive in our society as porn currently is. So I was giving myself a very big task right from the get-go. I constantly emphasize that Make Love Not Porn is not anti-porn because the issue isn't porn. The issue is that we don't talk about sex in the real world.
Right.
If we did, amongst a whole host of other benefits, people would be able to bring a real-world mindset to the viewing of what is performative, produced entertainment.
Right.
And so that's why the tagline, pro-sex, pro-porn, pro-knowing the difference. But that is why Make Love Not Porn exists with only one mission in mind, which is to help make it easier for every single person in the world to talk openly and honestly about sex. And to do that in two respects. A, in the public domain, and by that I mean parents to children, teachers to schools, everyone to everyone. But B, and even more crucially, to talk about sex openly and honestly, privately, in your intimate relationships.
Right.
And the reason that's so key is because we don't talk about sex, it is an area of rampant insecurity for every single one of us. We all get vulnerable when we get naked.
Yeah.
Sexual ego is very fragile. People therefore find it bizarrely difficult to talk about sex with the people they're actually having it with while they're actually having it.
Yes.
Because
as a phone sex operator, I know that too, because my clients can't talk about sex and they can't talk to their partners. They tell me what they're not talking to their partners about.
Exactly, Jessie. Because in that situation, you are terrified that if you say anything at all about what is going on, if you comment on the action anyway at all, you'll potentially hurt the other person's feelings. You'll put them off you. You will derail the encounter. You'll potentially derail the entire relationship. But at the same time, you want to please your partner. You want to make them happy. Everybody wants to be good in bed. Nobody knows exactly what that means. And so you will seize your cues from anywhere you can. And if the only cues you've ever seen are in porn, those are the ones you'll take.
Right.
And so that's why, given this mission of talk about it, I decided to take every dynamic in social media and apply them to this one area no other social network or platform will go in order to socialize sex. And to make real-world sex and talking about it socially acceptable and therefore ultimately just as socially shareable as anything else we share on Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, Instagram.
Right.
And so, that's why a little over 7 years ago now, we launched MakeLoveNotPorn.tv, where anybody from anywhere in the world can submit to us videos of themselves having real-world sex. But we are very clear what we mean by this. As I was saying earlier, we're not porn, we're not amateur. We are building a whole new category, social sex.
Would you consider that educational or social?
I consider it both, actually. I'll come on to the educational part of that. So our competition isn't porn, it's Facebook and YouTube. Or rather, it would be if Facebook and YouTube allowed you to socially self-express. And so, as I said earlier, social sex videos on Make Love Not Porn are not about performing for the camera. They're just about doing what you already do on every social platform, which is capture what goes on in the real world as it happens spontaneously in all its funny, messy, glorious, silly, comical, ridiculous, awkward humanness. We curate to make sure of that. Designed to Make Love Not Porn around human curation. Our curators watch every single video submitted from beginning to end. We don't publish it unless it's real. And we have, as you know, a revenue sharing business model. And I want to drill a bit more into what I mean by social sex, because we are doing something very unique. Porn is purely and straightforwardly masturbation material. We are not just that. We are that too, by the way, extremely happy to be that. But we are a number of other socially beneficial things on top of that. Social sex is enormously reassuring because we celebrate real-world everything. Real-world bodies, real-world hair, real-world penis size, real world breast size.
Mm-hmm.
Our mantra is everybody is beautiful when they're having real world sex, and they really are.
Mm-hmm.
Then we're also reassuring precisely because we celebrate the awkwardness, the accidents, the messiness. If you only learn about sex from porn, and again, the issue isn't porn, the issue is that we don't have sex education and enough conversation.
Right.
But if you only learn about sex from porn unfortunately teaches you that sex is a performance. Nothing must go wrong. Oh my God, it did. How excruciatingly embarrassing. I can just think about this thing, whatever. Whereas we go, if you can't laugh at yourselves in bed, when can you? And so in our videos, ridiculous things happen, comical things, because this is the real world.
Yeah.
And then obviously we celebrate, again, something that, it's absolutely there in certain types of porn, but unfortunately not the mass market ones that most people access. And we celebrate real world emotion. We celebrate love, intimacy, feelings. One man wrote to us and the Make Love Not Porn stars, he said, the sex of that video was incidental. I want what you guys have. I saw the way that you looked at each other. I saw the way your eyes met. I hope one day I can meet someone I'll have that with. We get very moving emails.
Yeah.
But the overarching goal of all of this, Jessie, I'm going to come on to your question about education. So, when I say to people, Make Love Not Porn's mission is this one very simple thing to make it easier to talk about sex. Because we don't do that currently, people don't get how massively, profoundly transformative that would be. As I said, I designed Make Love Not Porn around my own beliefs, one of which is that everything in life starts with you and your values.
Mm-hmm.
And so I regularly ask people this question: what are your sexual values? And nobody can ever answer me because we're not taught to think like that.
Yeah.
Our parents bring us up to have good manners, work ethic, sense of responsibility, accountability. Nobody ever brings us up to behave well in bed. But they should, because in bed, values like empathy, sensitivity, generosity, kindness, honesty, respect are as important as those values are in every other area of our lives where we are actively taught to exercise them. And so my vision for the world that I would love to see if Make Love Not Porn ever achieves this mission at scale is that parents will bring their children up openly to have good sexual values and good sexual behavior in the same way they currently bring them up to have good values and good behavior in every other area of life. We will therefore cease to bring up rapists. Because the only way that you end rape culture, and this really is the only way, is by inculcating in society and openly talked about, understood, operated, and very importantly, aspired to gold standard of what constitutes good sexual values and good sexual behavior. When we do that, we go a long way to ending Me Too, sexual harassment, sexual abuse, sexual violence, all areas where the perpetrators currently rely on the fact that we do not talk about sex to ensure victims will never speak up. Right. Never go to authorities, never to anybody. When we end that, we empower women and girls worldwide. When we do that, we create a far happier world for everybody, including men. And when we do that, we are one step closer to world peace. I talk about Make Love Not Porn as my attempt to bring about world peace, and I'm not joking.
To your point, those of us who work in the industry know that often in producing porn, there is a lot of discussion and a lot of work to make sure everybody's consenting. But those are precisely the things that wind up on the cutting room floor. And so what you're left with is, this, what seems to be like a seamless, performative, sexual, encounter without negotiation, when in fact probably
communication. Yeah.
the sex that happens in porn is more negotiated than most sex that most people are having, and so it creates like this false sense.
Many things are laid at porn's door that should be laid at society's. It is not porn's role to be sex education.
Right.
The only reason it's ended up in that position is because we do not talk openly and honestly about sex. That's the ludicrous thing about it. Also, what is very unfortunate, because I get interviewed a lot about porn, and I've spent the 11 years I've been working on Make Love Not Porn trying to get people to see the nuance in everything we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I have to say to journalists all the time is that I get very frustrated when people use the word porn like it's all one big homogenous mass. Right. Because that is like using the word literature to say it's all the same thing. I explain that the landscape of porn is as rich and infinitely varied as the landscape of literature.
Yeah.
As many genres, subgenres, different approaches. And in fact, to make my point to the journalists I talk to, I say to them, so when the media shrieks and squawks about porn, they only ever do it about one genre of porn, which is the one you're most likely to encounter on the tube sites, which is that genre of straight porn where the man is dominating a woman and making her submit to him.
Yeah.
I say to them, funnily enough, the media never shrieks and squawks about that huge genre of porn that is for men who adore being dominated by and submitting to women. And the reason we never hear about that in mainstream media is because that does not accord with our societal construct of masculinity.
Right.
And by the way, that's a huge shame because, I say to them, out there in the world are millions of men who would adore to be dominated by and submit to a woman in bed.
So many.
Exactly. There are millions of women who would actually adore dominating a man in bed and have to submit to them. And yet most of those men and women will never, ever do that because in their heads that's inconceivable given traditional gender roles and societal norms.
Right.
So shriek about that porn instead. But essentially, we all watch porn. We don't talk about it. So porn, therefore, exists for those people who outside of the people who work in it, in this parallel universe, in this shadowy other world.
Yeah.
Porn, therefore, lacks a number of the tools that we use in every other part of our lives to improve them. So, for example, porn lacks curation and navigation, or rather, it lacks socially acceptable curation navigation, because of course there are sites that curate porn, but they're porn sites. There is no Yelp of porn, and there's no Yelp of porn. And again, this is me explaining to journalists as I have to all the time. There is no Yelp of porn because right now it's really okay to come into the office on a Monday morning, stand by the water cooler, and go, "I'm really bored of the restaurants I'm eating at. Who knows any restaurant?" It's not okay to come in, stand by the water cooler, and go, "I'm really bored of the porn I've been watching. Who knows some new porn?" And that's a problem because, again, the landscape of porn could really do with socially acceptable curation and navigation so that people found their way to the kind of porn that they would absolutely love watching. I mean, Jessie, you and I totally know a ton of brilliant female queer pornographers making really creative, innovative, disruptive porn who are not getting the traffic and the revenue that they deserve because no one can find them.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
And part of the problem is that every time there is a space where porn curation starts to thrive, say Tumblr, say Patreon, those inevitably get shut down or they inevitably crack down and drive all
start
of the
pushing
people.
all of the porn off of it.
Right.
So
And forbid that kind of work. And so both sex workers, porn creators and porn curators have jumped from site to site to site from the beginning of the internet. But unfortunately, there's never been a stable home because inevitably they always get driven off.
And again, to go back to my point about nuance, I mean, again, what really frustrates me is the use of porn as a blanket term for gorgeous pieces of art with sexual themes. Any nudity in photography, all of that gets lumped under porn and booted off platforms. And that's ludicrous as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's ludicrous that porn at all gets treated like that. But yeah, I mean, I think that it is a huge problem because there isn't space for the curation, for the creativity, for people to advertise the work that they're doing, which again, goes back to what you were saying at the very beginning of this interview. So how is it that people who are adding value through this work, how do they get paid for it? That becomes really difficult for all of these reasons.
And by the way, Jessie, we all share the same frustration about. I mean, don't even get me started on payment processing.
I bet you know a thing or two about that. Yeah.
Honestly, if you had told me 11 years ago that I would have spent the amount of time I've spent talking to payment processors, I would not have believed you.
Yeah.
And that's an area that I am absolutely determined to do something about in whatever way I can. Again, part of constantly trying to raise funding for Make Love Not Porn for my sex tech fund is the ability to actually invest in and create an infrastructure for all of us that would actually demonstrate to the rest of the world how much you can operate all of these things that we are banned from and have them absolutely thrive, as opposed to this knee-jerk reaction of no adult content.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, all of that seems really important. And I also think that, I was thinking as you were talking about bodies and about representation, I think that is so, it is so important, and it's so much more important than just talking up the fact that every body is beautiful. I get the same sort of response to a lot of my work, which is that, as a plus size woman, I get lots of messages, especially from women, but from men too, who say, I watch you and I feel better about my body. It makes me feel more sexy. And that's actually something that I didn't anticipate or expect, because that wasn't my main focus. I was just doing the work that I do. And also from men who are like, seeing people who I'm actually attracted to, or who I feel, attraction to, makes me feel more justified or not justified, that's not the right word, but makes me feel more comfortable with my own desires. And I think that
it's like validating.
Yeah, validating is a better way to say it. I think we don't pay enough attention to that, to what is having people with a very diverse range of bodies. What does that do for people in terms of them feeling a sort of way about themselves?
No, exactly, Jessie, because, we get those emails at Make Love Not Porn all the time about how much people appreciate the fact that we're celebrating real world bodies, real world ages, by the way. Older people write to us saying, we're so thrilled you celebrate Make Older Love Not Porn. And the fact of the matter is, when I go back to because again, one of my philosophies is communication through demonstration.
Right.
And again, I designed Make Love Not Porn around that. Again, it's about, the only way you overcome those appalling, societally embedded belief that beauty is always skinny and looks like this or whatever. You only overcome that at this very visceral emotional level by demonstrating that everybody finds real world people sexually desirable.
Right.
Because that is where literally the rubber hits the road in terms of really tackling lack of self-esteem issues, when you can see that you can be whatever shape, whatever age, in whatever condition. And again, by the way, we celebrate Make Disabled Love Not Porn. You are a sexual being. You are glorious in your own sexuality. You are desirable. And and by the way, you can be on your own or with we have many solo videos on Love Not Porn as well. But it's basically when people see all of that expressed in a sexual context, that is when it really brings it home to them that you don't have to be this aspirational whatever to be sexually desirable, and that is what really cuts through.
I think all of that is right. It allows people to feel desire for somebody that
yes.
That they
exactly.
aren't conditioned to feel desire for because
Absolutely.
of the way that we're socialized. And then when they say, oh, well, I find very sexy. Well, I could probably be sexy too. I think that there's that becomes really powerful for people.
Yeah.
This is all very interesting, but I do think we should make a pivot here, because I really want to hear about the relaunch and what is happening on the site now.
Sure. Well, relaunch probably kind of magnifies it. The fact of the matter is that Make Love Porn has been limping along, stuck together with duct tape and chewing gum for years. And because, I just have enormous trouble finding investors and funding. And my biggest obstacle finding funding is the social dynamic that I call fear of what other people will think. We essentially undertook a very slow and extended overhaul, because again, that was all we could afford. And our relaunch is actually 4.5 months overdue from when we hoped it would be at the end of last year. But we have now re-engineered the site so that at the most basic level, we had a lot of streaming issues. And so we have a wonderfully loyal community at Make Love Not Porn, and a wonderfully loyal Make Love Not Porn star community. We are always very open and transparent with them about our difficulties, our lack of funds and resources, our tiny team. And, I go back to my business model of, shared values plus shared action equals shared profit. We have built a community around shared sexual values. And I have to tell you, that makes for such a strong community. There were a lot of fundamentals just to kind of address, like being able to stream okay. Our video submissions process was very frustrating for our Make Love Not Porn stars, so making that work properly. And then we had the opportunity to finally build some features that were always in our vision for Make Love Not Porn from day one, but that we couldn't afford to build sooner. And so we're especially thrilled at the fact that our members can now appreciate videos. And so we have our version of the Facebook like, which is the Make Love Not Porn yes. Because obviously we all welcome great real world sex with yes, yes, yes. And so you can now yes our videos. And can also comment on them, which again has been enormously welcomed by both members and Make Love Not Porn stars, because historically, we would get wonderful emails saying, please can you tell these Make Love Not Porn stars, oh my God, I love what they're doing. Well, we would forward them on. But now members can actually leave comments. And, what is terrific too is human curation lies at the heart of everything we do at Make Love Not Porn. As I said earlier, our curators watch every single video from beginning to end. We curate everything in Make Love Not Porn social. And what we mean by that is, on your profile of Make Love Not Porn, your dedicated URL, you can post anything you want, photos, text, illustration. We created that ability to substitute for the tumblers of this world.
Mm-hmm.
But we do, again, a human eye looks at that before we publish it. And equally, we also human curate the comments. Because what I would say about Make Love Not Porn is that I feel very lucky, especially now, to work on a platform that is all about nothing but love, showcases nothing but love, celebrates nothing but love, focuses on and delivers nothing but love. And so you will see in the comment boxes on Make Love Not Porn now, there's a little note that just says, please keep it positive. But I'm happy to say that, in the 2.5 weeks since we introduced that feature, we've had well over 100 comments and they've all been fantastic. And in fact, our members are just saying wonderful things. Now Make Love Not Porn stars can respond. So that's terrific. And then we've redesigned the site to make it a lot easier to navigate and browse. We've made it a lot easier to see which are the latest videos, built out our Make Love Not Porn star directory. There are many more ways you can search and surface, the content you like to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Just hopefully made it a much vastly improved and upgraded experience for both our members and our Make Love Not Porn stars.
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty big overhaul. Having run various projects, I know how much that kind of back-end work can take.
Oh my God.
Just take every small tweak, is an enormous undertaking. So.
No, exactly. And actually, we took the relaunch live, as I said, 4.5 months late, about 3 weeks ago. And of course, since we have been dealing with all of the user issues and bugs and glitches that have come to light. But our tech team is working around the clock, and our members, as I say, are very forbearing, very appreciative of the new site, and helping us by highlighting the things they run into that need fixing.
Nice.
The one thing I did want to just say to you, Jessie, was I loved your talk at the Women of Sex Tech conference.
Oh, thank you so much.
And I can't wait to share it widely once they're all published online, which I hope they will be very soon, because I especially loved how very straightforward you were about, the naivety with which a lot of people are right now approaching the situation of, oh my God, I'm financially challenged, I'm going to get into online sex work.
Right.
And, I'd read the New York Times article a couple of weeks previously about the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
Which, a flood of civilians means, market saturation and less income, actually,
Right.
and doesn't help professional sex workers. And, I just wanted to say that actually what they should be doing is they should be coming to Make Love Not Porn instead. Because in the same way that you said, online sex work is not quick, easy, and low risk. We are quick, easy, and low risk.
Yeah.
And actually, and obviously, by the way, again, because we've been bootstrapping for years, there isn't a widespread awareness of us out there. But for anybody who does want a source of income, we are a better option than trying to do something that they really don't comprehend the full ramifications of.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And I think that was one of the things that I was trying to get across in my talk. And I'm glad that it did, was that there is so many ramifications for this that you can't even, for going into sex work and for living with the stigma of sex work, that I don't think is possible to imagine until you are in it for years.
Yeah.
And I think that there is a naivety of people who are trying to get into it, who are like, oh, well, I'll just sell some nudes and then, and then I can walk away from it at any point. And that's not, you can't just walk away from it at any point
Yeah.
without it having some ramifications. So that's actually, I want to ask you a question then. I think, in what ways is your site more low risk? Like, are you doing things to help to mitigate pirating, or how are people more protected within Make Love Not Porn?
I'm really glad you asked that question. Let me answer it by also contextualizing it in a broader context, which I alluded to in my talk. Because the point I always make, just to make sure that people really take this on board, is the young white male founders of the giant tech platforms that dominate our lives today are not the primary targets, online and offline, of harassment, abuse, sexual assault, violence, rape, revenge porn. Therefore, they do not, and they did not design for it.
Right.
Those of us at risk every day, women, people of color, LGBTQ, the disabled, sex workers, we design and build safe spaces and safe experiences. So I and my team spent literally years conceptually designing Make Love Not Porn before we ever built it, because we knew that if we were going to invite people to do something they've never done before, socially share their real world sex, we had to think through every possible ramification of that to create a completely safe and trustworthy space. First of all, it's not possible to physically complete our submissions process unless your video is fully consensual, legal, everybody's over 18. We require full identifying details and 2 forms of government-issued visual ID for every participant, including if you've chosen to have somebody else behind the camera. Even if we don't see them in the video, we have to know exactly who they are. We need 2 forms of ID for them. It's not possible to even complete submitting, let alone ever have published anything that is not fully consensual and legal. Then when you've submitted your video, we do something, as I said, nobody else does, human curation. We watch every single video from beginning to end. We do that just to make sure it's real. But that also enables us to see everything going on in every piece of content that we choose to publish on our site. When we accept your video, we then also do something nobody else does. We begin building a personal relationship with every single Make Love Not Porn star. So we will communicate with you by your chosen channel. You can say whether you'd rather hear from us on email or text, WhatsApp, Skype, phone. We'll adopt whatever your preferred channel is. We will answer questions. We'll handhold. But essentially, we get to know and have a relationship with every single one of our contributors. If you're at all worried about your employer, your college, it's absolutely fine to be anonymous. You can wear masks, faces in shadow, pixelated, out of frame. We actually have a how-to section on our blog for Make Love Not Porn stars, including a post called "How to Shoot a Banging Real-World Sex Video Without Ever Showing Your Face." So we help with that. Then your video is only viewable on our platform. It's only viewable by our members, and obviously, it's only viewable by those members who've actually paid to rent it. And the reason we operate a rent and stream model versus a download and own is because our commitment to our Make Love Not Porn stars is the moment anything changes, your relationship, your life, your circumstances, even just your mind, you tell us, we take your videos down, they're gone forever, they're nowhere else on the internet. We could publish your video one day, you could change your mind overnight, we'll take it down the next.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually really amazing, because that was one of the things, that was one of the main things I was talking about in my talk, which is that we as people who produce content don't have any control over where that content goes. And that's I think that's one of the biggest risks.
Well, that's precisely, you've just heard what this world could be if we designed all of it.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I think that you're right to say that the people who are running MindGeek are not the people who are at risk or who will be, and so they don't care. They don't care.
They don't give a shit.
No,
they absolutely don't give a shit.
As long as they're making money on videos, like they have no impetus to take it down.
Again, Jessie, I always for the world at large and for reporters and so on, I always try to make them see how the same business dynamics run across every sector, because where this is especially ridiculous is in cybersecurity. A guy called Stephen Cobb, who's a cyber security expert, a few years back wrote a white paper called Risk, Cultural Theory, and the White Male Effect. And the white male effect is a known term in cybersecurity. It came about through a study that was done, I think, back in the 90s, that identified that, white men who dominate the sector are not the ones most at risk. And they have a very different attitude towards risk from women and people of color.
Yeah.
And yet they dominate the technological sector that is designed to address risk and security.
Right.
Of all sectors where diverse viewpoints should be taken on board, that is one of the most crucial. And so this is an issue across everything.
Yeah. And I was trying to get this across in my talk that I don't feel like the answer to this is nobody should engage in this sort of work, or nobody should put out content or anything like that. I mean, I think that the work that we do as sex workers, but also the work that your Make Love Not Porn stars are doing is really valuable. And it's really valuable for all the reasons that we've talked about. I think what we need to be focusing on, and what you're focusing on, which is why I really appreciate what you're doing, is figuring out how to do that in a way that protects and pays the people who are doing that work.
Exactly. And also, Jessie, very importantly, socializes and normalizes it. Because one of my objectives to Make Love Not Porn is that if we can achieve our mission at scale, we want to contribute to making one day sex work as normal a career choice as doctor, lawyer, or accountant.
Yeah.
As normalized, as destigmatized, as able to use your own name and be who you are openly and publicly as any other career choice. That's the end goal.
Yeah. Well, that's a good note to end on.
So next Friday, May the 15th, Stoya very kindly invited me to join in the evening of readings that she's organized.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, support Lysistrata and sex workers. And so me and Essex Noir and Dale Cooper and Cinnamon Love and Charlotte Shane and some other people are going to be doing readings. I mean, Stoya very kindly reached out, and I said to her, look, I'm actually not a writer. I haven't written anything. I'm not a poet. But and I said to her, absolutely tell me if this doesn't work. But I said, the one thing I could read that is very meaningful to me is that I would like to read a selection of the emails that we get at Make Love Not Porn from our members, because they span a spectrum of hysterically funny to very moving, and a real spectrum of people and writing styles and approaches. And she thought that was a great idea and was very happy for me to do that. So that's what I'll be doing.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find Make Love Not Porn and you?
Sure. So you can find me and Make Love Not Porn on Twitter, at Cindy Gallop, at Make Love Not Porn. You can find us on Instagram, at Cindy Gallop, at Make Love Not Porn. You can find us on Facebook. I'm Cindy.Gallop on Facebook, and Make Love Porn is MLNP TV on Facebook. Our YouTube channel is Make Love Not Porn TV, and I'm on LinkedIn.
Great. Thank you so much. It was really, really nice to talk to you.
Great to talk to you as well, and look forward to seeing another wonderful event in some form or other soon.
Yeah, I hope so.
Thank you for joining us for yet another episode of the Peep Show podcast. I'm PJ Sage, and you can find me on Twitter at PeachSage.
And I'm Jessie Sage, and you can find me on Twitter at sapiotextual or at jessiesage.com.
We would like to remind you that we have a Patreon account and would appreciate your support. Please visit patreon.com/peepshowpodcast. Our music is courtesy of Joe Kennedy. The show was produced by Jessie and PJ Sage.
Signing off. Have a great week.